What's going on, guys? It's Bagas here, and today we're gonna be reviewing a documentary that, in my opinion, is very underrated. Today, we're gonna be reviewing The Truth About Killer Dinosaurs. And since I pretty much have nothing else to say, let's just get on with it. The Truth About Killer Dinosaurs is a two-episode documentary where the premise is basically analyzing how two dinosaurs could or could not kill each other. Each episode spends most of its time analyzing the weapons and other interesting facts about the dinosaurs, and then we get to see a final fight at the end. Also, the series is presented by Bill Oddie. Now, much like my Big Al Uncovered segment in my Ballad of Big Al review, since all of this is pretty much science stuff, rather than going through the episode as a whole, I'll just be mentioning some highlights, as honestly, the best way for you to view this is by watching it for yourself. In the first episode, we see an analysis on arguably the most famous dinosaur conflict of all, T-Rex versus Triceratops. They analyze both dinosaurs based on their weapons, speed, agility, intelligence, among other things, and the final fight at the end sees the T-Rex ambushing a Triceratops and managing to break off one of its horns, but then ends up getting gutted by the other horn of the Triceratops. And a quick side note, I actually quite like how they made the T-Rex lose, as it helps demythologize T-Rex as not an invisible killing machine, which, by the way, I'm pretty sure you've all seen the fans' reaction to the Dominion teaser. Since, in nature, anything can happen, and, no creature is guaranteed to always win. In fact, predators a lot of the time lose more than they win. Some of my personal highlights within the episode is the biomechanics segments that, they employ to test out certain things about both dinosaurs. Like how they made an actual T-Rex skull made from steel to test the power of T-Rex jaws, crushing a cow leg bone, shredding meat from pork, and, just for fun, crushing a car. Also, they made a Triceratops skull and crash test it like they would a car to see whether it can ram into a T-Rex like how a rhino would. And, well, I also appreciate the fact how every decision they made and decided to test out comes first on the fossil evidence, because at the end of the day, all we know about these prehistoric creatures is their fossils, and thus should always be the basis of whatever you're trying to figure out about them. The second episode analyzes a fight between Velociraptor and Ankylosaur. Also, by the way, it's not really specified in the show what species of Ankylosaur it is, but considering a similarity to the North American Ankylosaurus, I'ma just assume this is Spinosaurus, which is also what the Wikipedia entry says. Anyways, we once again get an analysis of the weapons each dinosaur has, and the final fight sees two Velociraptors killing a young Ankylosaurus. And also in the middle of the episode, there's a fight between a Proceratops and a Velociraptor. I like how the episode starts with debunking the Jurassic Park Velociraptors, because to the general public, that's their image of what a Velociraptor is, when in reality, Velociraptor was nothing like what was depicted at all. Also, in case you didn't know already, the Jurassic Park Velociraptors were based more on the bigger Deinonychus. I also like how they debunked the disemboweling sickle claw theory, because as shown here, while it can puncture through the skin and muscle, it can't slice through the actual flesh because the underside was rounded. And speaking of which, they theorized a new hunting method, but that's also kind of outdated now. Much like the previous episode, my personal highlights are the scenes where they tested the biomechanics. Not only with the claw test, but they also made an ankylosaur tail that whacked really hard. Also, can I just point out that in both of these episodes, the Tyrannosaurus, because Tarbosaurus makes a cameo in this episode, just get wrecked by the herbivores. Finally, I also really like the fact that they end the series by saying how our knowledge of paleontology is always changing as new discoveries are made, and the final sentence is that we, the audience, could potentially be the one to make that new discovery, which I think is a very inspiring way to end the series. In conclusion, The Truth About Killer Dinosaurs is one of the best science-focused dinosaur documentaries that creates these epic dinosaur scenarios based on the fossil evidence, which should always be the basis for any dinosaur documentary. I enjoyed the parts where they run experiments using biomechanics because, for one, it kind of answers the question of how paleontologists know how dinosaurs' features work, and I also remember seeing those segments as a kid and just being really fascinated with it, which, now that I think about it, is probably what started my dream to be a mechanical engineer. On a visual front, the designs are okay. They're not bad by any means, but they're also not spectacular either. And part of it is because that I've seen so many dinosaur models at this point that these just look standard to me. But I will say I really like the look of the Velociraptors. Also, Bill Oddie is just so charming to watch, and he brings a lot of fun charisma into his presentation that makes it a little bit less boring. Although, I will say, since this documentary focuses fully on the science pretty much, some people may not have as much fun watching it, which is also probably why it's not talked about all too often. But if you're a guy like me who's in the market for a good science-based dinosaur documentary, I would recommend Ballad of Big Al. But this remains a close contender, and I think it deserves to be talked about more. So, once again, time to put it on a tier list. Quality-wise, I would give it a 4.7 because I tend to give a little more leeway towards science-driven documentaries, which this one is, because the most important, I guess, goal of a documentary is to teach the audience something new, which is also why I gave Ballad of Big Al a 4.8 on the quality scale. So, and it's not as high as Ballad of Big Al because that Ballad of Big Al is also helped by the actual life of Big Al, and this one, since it's fully science, it might not be as it doesn't really balance both sides of what people enjoy about dinosaur documentaries. As for which entertainment wise, I would give it a 4.2 because it, like I said, it can be a bit boring since for some people, especially at certain points in the documentary, because it focuses a lot on the science and people who aren't really that interested in that. Well, I think the proper wording is that people who much enjoy more of the actual depictions of the dinosaurs within their natural environment might not enjoy this documentary as much as others. So that's why it's a 4.2. Rewatchability wise, it gets a 4.4 because while it's only 2 hours long, which is good, it's only 2 episodes, but the problem is that each episode is also 1 hour long, so it takes longer to go through each episode, and therefore this actually, at least for me, the series felt longer than it actually was, because I felt like I guess, well, okay, well, not to that extreme level, but I don't know, it just felt kind of long to get through. And as for my personal opinion, I would give it a 4. Not one of my favorites, but I still enjoyed it quite a bit. I did find I might be, I need to be in a specific mood to enjoy it more because, yeah, at the time we watching this, I don't know, was not in the right mood, I guess, so maybe that's why it's not higher, but I think I might, and this might go for other people as well, but you might need to be in a specific mood to enjoy it more. But I do still think it's pretty underrated and it deserves to be talked about more because honestly, like, you're not gonna find that many, better science-driven dinosaur documentaries. Therefore, that brings it to a total score of 17.3, landing it solidly in the S tier. Hope you guys shared the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And I don't really have much else to talk about, really, if we're being entirely honest. I think this might be my shortest review. I mean, it'll definitely be my second shortest. Cause like so far I'm like done editing the first episode, so I just need to edit the second episode, the what do you call it, the conclusion, the yeah, basically it should either be my shortest or my second short, just beyond about a big out. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have much else to say. So I guess I'll just see you in the next review video, or the next video. I guess you'll see me in the next video first for the next review video. Yeah, bye.